welcome everybody to this Friday night monk chat with the Empty Cloud Monastery Monastics. I am Sabana with the Seminary Nipako. Having returned from a couple of weeks away, visiting many different monasteries on the East Coast and meeting with new and old monastic friends. So I've really had a great time. I hope I will be lively enough to answer questions. Let's start with Jojo.
Shall we Namo Tassa?
Oh yeah. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami.
Alright, starting with Jojo. Jojo asks, hi there. Going off the Volition Sutta in Guttara Nikaya 10.2, Volition, is the gladness that comes from Sila, let's say 10 wholesome actions plus regular generosity, immediate joy, or arrives later like a sapling? Is there anything you would add? I'm really prioritizing Sila in my practice as the answer to get my meditation to take off.
In my opinion, in doing wholesome deeds, skillful deeds, kusala dhammas, upholding sila, even something as simple as not getting angry at a time when in the past you might have gotten angry, but especially doing deeds of generosity and so forth. If you're planning to do something good, then you will feel some happiness in anticipation. While you're preparing to do something good, you will feel more happiness. While you do the good deed, then you will be happy. And then afterwards, when you recall and recollect the good deed that you've done, you'll be happy. So it's possible to be happy all along the way, before and after. One thing that I would add is just having the idea that the purpose of Sila is for our own happiness. So if you are trying to practice Sila and it's making you feel crabby, negative, or blaming others because you are trying and making the effort to be good, and then other people not making the same effort, and then you feel judgmental or negative or something like that, then you definitely have got the wrong end of the stick as far as what this practice is for. So remembering the purpose of Sila will help it to be effective in purifying the mind. And then beyond that, if you also would look around you, and at different times when you see good, outstanding ethical behavior from other people, sometimes it really just warms the heart, and you feel so touched and moved by seeing those good deeds. Even if you saw, a dog or a cat doing something nice, you would feel so warm and happy because of that. And so you should have the same kind of joy with your reflecting about your own behavior. Now you may have something to add to that?
No, I think you're very, very thorough there.
Okay.
Thank you, Aya. Hello, Rick. Hello, Elaine. Rick says, can you talk about ways to cultivate and strengthen mudita? So I actually think this is a really good question to kick off from the previous one. Because a way that I often cultivate mudita is by seeing all the wonderful good deeds that people do around the monastery. So when I see somebody, especially doing something they don't have to, like sometimes I'll come back and my water bottle that's next to my seat, it'll magically be full. So somebody went out of their way to make sure that I would have water at my seat. And that just fills me with so much joy, this little act of kindness. And if you start to look for those throughout your day, that can bring a whole lot of joy, just seeing what other little things people are doing. I find in particular the little things people are more likely to brush under the rug and not count, like seeing somebody hold open a door, saying thank you, assisting somebody with something small. Those are really, really great opportunities to cultivate mudita because they tend to happen a lot. We don't necessarily have to look for something big to be able to cultivate it. And I also find gratitude in particular is very useful for me to practice mudita. So just thinking about things people have done for you in the past. So like I was saying, you can look at things that were done before, things that are happening now, and things that you know are planning on being happened, and you can get joy from that. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Uh, Only that seeing the interconnection among all beings supports mudita. So if a parent notices a child learns to walk, learns to talk, uh, gets a prize at school or something like that, the child feels so much joy and happiness because of the accomplishment of that child. But that's because the parent feels such a strong connection to that child. That's the reason why they take that personal joy in what the accomplishment the child is developing. So if you could look at all the people around you and look at them as if they were your own relative, as if they are like part of you, part of your family, and then see their accomplishments and be happy about that.
Thank you, Aya. Hello, Eric. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Moria. Ryan asks, Venerables, did Buddha speak about formless beings made of mind before aggregates, having non-locality in space, as it is stated in the Abhidhamma?
Uh, the references to the formless realms are somewhat scattered in the suttas. So I don't have the impression that there's a fully developed systematic approach to it in the suttas, but you may remember something that I don't.
I'm not aware of any either.
Yeah, so that's probably a Abhidhamma sense in terms of how many aggregates different beings have.
Thank you, Aya. Hello, Jerry. Hello, Julie. Hello, Mary. Hello, Jello. Jello asks, how can we use right intention to lead to awakening, and how can we feel a sense of being supported until we reach the goal of no support necessary?
So intention, chaitana, is karma. So there's that very close relationship for everybody who's not yet made the complete breakthrough to awakening and not gone beyond the tendency to create karmas that lead us to some kind of a rebirth. So when someone like that, their intentions are wholesome intentions lead to a pleasant rebirth, unwholesome intentions lead to an unpleasant rebirth. But there is such a thing as having intentions that lead to cessation. So cultivating the awareness of cessation, what cessation is, letting go, and even having the thought that when you practice your sila, when you make the right effort in developing samadhi, when you intentionally are consistent and doing what you need to do to put yourself in a situation for the development of samadhi, when you even make the effort to show up at a Dhamma talk, to put yourself in the presence of true friends, true people, and to listen to the true Dhamma. All of those things were choices. You did those things on purpose, and so those are intentional. But just because you've done something on purpose doesn't mean that this is the type of intention that's leading you to a rebirth. Even the Buddha, intentionally woke up in the morning, and he intentionally cast his Dhamma eye across the world to see if there was any beings who could benefit from the teachings, and he intentionally put himself in the presence of people who could benefit from the teaching. He intentionally taught the Dhamma for 50 years. All of those things were done intentionally, but none of those intentional behaviors were the kind of intentions that were directed towards another life, towards rebirth. Instead, they were really coming from karuna, or from compassion. Having the sense of being supported until we reach the goal of no support necessary. So the sport is the magga, it's the path of training. Following, in the Four Noble Truths, once we've had a glimpse of Nibbana, once the Dhamma eye is opened, and we've got a sense of losing the commitment, or the delusion about the self, seeing that opening, seeing the possibility of the defilements coming to their end, then we just have to keep going around and around with the path of the training. So the path of training is the support. It's said that one who practices the Eightfold Noble Path comes close to Nibbana. It doesn't say that the Eightfold Noble Path leads you into Nibbana. That all this practice with the Noble Path brings you right up to the doorway. And then you just have to let go and allow nature to take its course. So it's not, you don't go through that last gate by your willpower. Instead, you go through that last gate because it's, in a certain way, like awakening is natural for somebody who's practiced.
So some thoughts I had about this as well is related to what Aya was saying about the path as a support. Somewhere in the Itivuttaka, but I don't remember what number it is, there's this sutta called, I think it's called like the Sangati or something like that, where there's this person that is following behind the Buddha, and he's putting his feet where the Buddha stepped and holding the corner of his Sangati. And the Buddha says that if somebody is literally right there holding onto his robe, following step by step behind him, but he's not following the path, he is nowhere near the Buddha. Meanwhile, somebody could be very, very far away and be following the Noble Eightfold Path, and they are the ones that are close to the Buddha. So you can also look at the support that way. If you're ever feeling a little bit lonely on the path, that by following it, you're close to the Buddha, even if you're not physically near him, since he's gone into Parinibbana. And another thought as well is I practiced by myself for about 6 years, and it's pretty difficult. So if you have the opportunity, go to monasteries, be around like-minded people, see what works for them with the types of struggles that you have. Another thing that the Buddha had said to Ananda was that spiritual friends are the entirety of the holy life. So they are a really, really great support up until we get to the point where we're able to go on our own. So some stage of awakening. Um, so for me personally, once I started to have the opportunity to go to monasteries, my practice changed dramatically for the better. So highly recommended, even if it's only a couple times a year. Like I used to have to travel really, really far, 3.5 hours to any nearby monastery, and it was always worth it. Ryan says, oh, this is a follow-up of the Abhidhamma question about the formless beings on what is the purpose of their existence?
Uh, well, all beings are caught in the round of samsara until they come to be on the path of cultivation on the Noble Eightfold Path. So it is possible for somebody who is a once returner or a non-returner to be enlightened and to be in a heavenly realm. We very frequently hear about those beings in the Brahma realms or in the Deva realms who are actually in the heavenly realm, still listening to the Dhamma and still practicing and still cultivating, still seeking out the Buddha and listening to Dhamma talks. Or even Saka is in the Deva realm, and it said that he went to the Brahma realm to have a Dhamma discussion. So I'm not actually bringing to mind thought of beings in the formless realms actively like listening and having those kind of activities related to the Dhamma, but it seems to me that it would be possible for somebody who was a once returner or a non-returner to be hanging out in the formless realm. In the Dattavibhanga Sutta, 140, in the Middle Length Discourse, the Buddha seems to criticize making that choice, that one who has realized the formless meditation can consider it and realize that this state is still impermanent and conditioned, and if he dies in that state, that then he would be in that state for many eons before coming back to a human realm and still having to do the work. So that sutta seemed to imply that it's better to go ahead and wake up rather than to seek for a rebirth in the formless realm. In the formless realm, it said, you're so far from the kind of thinking that we do while we're on the path. I don't think the formless realm is the best place to practice, actually. But the Deva realm or the Brahma realm, it's okay, you can practice there. And Americans or modern people, I sometimes hear people saying that it's stupid to think that you want to be reborn in the two-seated heaven or that you want to be reborn in the heavenly realm. But those heavenly realms are okay. It's possible to keep practicing in those heavenly realms. But I have not actually heard or read good examples of taking a birth in the formless realm in order to advance on the path.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is shortly after the Buddha's awakening, he went to find one of his teachers. I don't remember which one, but he was born in a formless realm. And he said that was too bad because he thought he would have benefited from the teachings.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Alara Kalama.
So the purpose of their existence is that they're clinging to existence. And that is their purpose, is that they wanted more existence, so they obtained more existence of that type. And they're still definitely in samsara.
Thank you, Aya. Ryan says, welcome back. Hello, Manal. Hello, Elaine. Elaine says, I am interested in learning about receiving and giving admonishment as part of right speech. I find that I am a bit sensitive at receiving admonishment, and they're referencing Majjhima Nikaya 15.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
It's sensitive, isn't it? Receiving admonishment is difficult. It's one of the most difficult skills that a person can have, to be able to receive admonishment. So in giving admonishment, it's really great to consider the factors of right speech. I'm not sure if it's spelled out in MN 15. Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head.
So if you're giving admonishment, first consider whether you know what the rule or the precept is that you're bringing up, whether you're actually familiar with it yourself, whether you have the right information, whether you've got accurate knowledge or insight into the situation that you're criticizing, and then consider your own purity, whether you have the fault that you're criticizing in another person or not, and then consider whether your own heart is free from anger and irritation, and whether you are just coming from a place of kindness and consideration, compassionate desire for the welfare of that person. And last of all, to consider whether it's the right time and the right place, the right circumstance. Would the other person be able to hear your admonishment in that situation? And if it's not the right time, look for a more suitable time. Now, sometimes criticism is not given perfectly. Somebody feels irritated or aggravated, and it's the wrong time, in the sense that it's either in front of people. You know, here they criticize. If you give admonishment in front of people, say, "Oh, why did you embarrass me in front of people?" But then if you get them alone by themselves and then you criticize them, then you say, "Oh, it's so not fair that you attacked me in private when I didn't have a witness to protect me," and so in some ways it's difficult to give a perfect admonishment, and it's always possible for the target to criticize that you didn't give that admonishment in just the right way, and you get this like processed criticism. But on the receiving end, knowing that a person who's criticizing you might be not perfect themselves. They might have the same fault that they're criticizing. They might be affected by emotions. They might be reacting more because of defensiveness and not out of goodwill and compassion towards you. So in those cases, it's said in one of the suttas that you don't have to take it personally and become personally upset or distraught or disturbed in your mind because of somebody who's giving this imperfect kind of admonition. You could see it's not really your problem if somebody else feels aggravated or annoyed or irritated, or if somebody else is, confused about right and wrong, and they're speaking from prejudice or from some kind of confusion. But you don't have to take it on board. Instead, you can just feel it's not your karma, so you don't have to take it on. But if the criticism is righteous, if it really is a fault of yours, and if the person is not motivated by anger, if they're motivated by compassion, and if they're giving a truthful criticism, then it says in that sutta that you should feel upset. You should feel ashamed. You should feel badly. But then you can use that sense of moral shame to quickly bring yourself around and come to a correction of your behavior. When a person is able to, as quickly as possible, if not right away, as soon as possible afterwards, to be able to acknowledge their fault, and then that's really great. I have an idea that if I make a mistake, and if I've done something that's unskillful, it's really beneficial if I take the time to look within and to try to understand why I made that mistake and what was the real fault involved. So it could be that, let's say, somebody breaks the rule about eating food at the wrong time, and they take some food in the evening, and then there could be that they would reflect about it, and they would think, oh, they were feeling stressful about it, about something else, and not taking the skillful way of being able to care for themselves to resolve their inner stress. They took some unskillful way to try to escape from stress by taking a snack or something like that. This is just a random example, not referring to anybody in specific. But then, because they understand why it happened, then they could undertake the determination not to repeat the same type of behavior again. And there's some shred of credibility that it's possible that if they understand how it happened, then they could be able to make the determination and to stop repeating that same type of behavior.
Just some small additions to Aya's wonderful answer. One is from Ajahn Chah, and one is actually from the Tibetan tradition, and I like them both. Ajahn Chah says something along the lines of, if somebody accuses you of being a dog, to check if you have a tail, which is something that Aya Sovana had begun to touch on. So in other words, if you're being accused of something, really reflect and see if it's a quality you have. And if it is, then great, you know what you can work on. And if it's not, then, well, you can just let it go. It means you don't have the tail, so you don't have to worry about it. And in the Tibetan tradition, they have a teaching, and I'm going to be paraphrasing, but along the lines of, if you find somebody that is very irritable or hurts you, look at them as a precious jewel and keep them nearby, because they're going to help you in being able to see your flaws and where you can work. Now, of course, this needs to be dealt with wisely, of course. Like if you're in an abusive situation or whatever, that's not the time to be a bodhisattva. Get out of there. But within reason, you can be like, hey, this person really pushes my buttons. What can I learn from this? And are they right? Because sometimes that's the hardest part. Acknowledging that somebody is correct in a way that really, really hurts. So this was one I like to reflect on a lot in particular, because it really flips the situation on its head. Instead of looking at the person as a burden, looking at them as a gift for your own practice. Hello, Usha. Ryan asks, Dear Aya, could you impart your wisdom on dependent origination, please? I hear it's easy. I also hear it is the loftiest teaching of the Buddha. That is also another way to explain the Noble Eightfold Path. Also, that explains the first two noble truths and the third, etc. Could you kindly clarify, please? Thank you.
Do you have a minute?
This could be a whole talk.
On the 12 steps of, the fundamental pattern of the dependent origination is causation, the basic model of causation. So this arising, that arises, this continuing, that continues, this ceasing, that ceases. So just understanding or taking an interest in causation and learning to look deeply into what really is causation and not simply an association. Just because two things happen at the same time does not mean that one caused the other one. And there are also different forms of causation, like if something is a necessary cause or a sufficient cause. So in order to give birth to a human child, you have to be a woman, so that's a necessary cause. But just merely the fact of being a woman doesn't mean that you got birth to a child. Yeah, so it's not a necessary cause. So you got to reflect very logically and clearly about that. So the Four Noble Truths is an example of the model of causation. So that the cause of dukkha, dukkha arises because of its cause. So the cause being present, dukkha is present. And then with the cessation of the cause of dukkha, then dukkha ceases. So that's how that works. I do think of dependent origination in terms of the three life model, which is the way it was taught by the Buddha. So in the 12-step model, the part which is saying dependent on ignorance arises volitional formations. Dependent on volitional formations arises consciousness. To me, those first two steps are like a summary and brief of everything that went before this lifetime. So, or it's a recap of causation in brief in two steps. So because of ignorance, then we made so many choices that had karmic consequences. And because of making the choices that is creating karma, then that brings us into continuing on the round of rebirth and the cycle of rebirth. Then from the conjunction of consciousness and name and form, then that has to do with the arising of our individuality, or the apparent seeming individuality, and then the what's happening in the present lifetime. So usually people find that the working with the six sense bases, the feeling that arises from that, and the craving that arises from that, and the clinging upadana, I would take it more, I think of it more as a grasping onto an existence than clinging. That section is the section where we do most of our work in terms of our present existence and the work we have to do in the Eightfold Path. So then you have how many dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of suttas talking about ways to understand the six sense bases, how knowing comes about from the sense faculties, how feeling arises from contact, and how the fetter or the bond that arises dependent on feeling. So that whole realm is very much the locus, like this is the world, this is where we have got to do the work right now. But I don't say that I heard that many modern teachers, some Vipassana teachers, I even heard this. I heard it myself with my own ears from a famous Vipassana teacher. In 2000, they said that craving is the key moment of dependent origination, that from that moment of craving, you had a choice to take the bait and can perpetuate the cycle of samsara, or else just because tanha arises, you can relinquish it or abandon it right there. And that's the point where you can get out of the cycle of rebirth. There's a wonderful article that can be found on the internet by Ajahn Brahmali, in which he shows very persuasively that actually the key factor is not tanha, that's not the key moment. The key moment is the first moment. It's avidya, it's delusion, or not knowing, ignorance, not understanding, which is the reason why you keep going around and around. And so if you want to break the cycle of craving, if you want to break the chain of the cycle of rebirth, if you are just trying to work on the problems that arise after your craving has been stirred up, that means like after your emotions have been stirred up. In a way, it's like using mindfulness, like after you get angry, then you can become mindful of your anger, and you can eventually see that, find out, come around to being able to let go of the anger and to eventually get out of it. But by the time you know you're angry, it's already too late. It's like the horse is already out of the barn, and it takes so much extra labor and effort to finally bring yourself down to a calmness and finally able to relinquish that, gradually let go of that anger. And so that's why if you're just trying to work on it at the point of tanha, it's always too late. But if you cultivate wisdom and develop the perception of the tilakkhana, of the perception of impermanence, dukkha, and non-self, and really cultivate and develop that perception, then the whole house of cards falls apart, and the dependent origination flows. Those are a couple of quick thoughts about dependent origination. Is enough?
That's good.
I'll let you talk about this one.
So Rick asks, what are skillful ways for lay practitioners to develop the 10 paramis? So I don't remember them off the top of my head, so we'll pull those up. So the 10 paramis are generosity, virtue, renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, determination, loving kindness, and equanimity. And there is some overlap in terms of how you could cultivate some of these. So one of the first ones that comes to mind for generosity, there are so many ways to give, and it doesn't have to involve money. So Since I am a Samanera and I don't have money, one way that I've continued to give since I left the lay life is I'll go give blood. I'm O positive, so a lot of people need it, and it's still a way for me to go and give. So when you're a layperson, you just have so many options. You can give your time. You could go to a local organization and volunteer, like a lot of homeless shelters and animal hospitals and places like that need volunteers. If you're near a monastery, usually they also will need assistance, everything from day-to-day stuff to whatever bigger things they have going on. So look into your local community and see what kind of impact you can have. And this can also be a way to practice patience, because if you're working with other people might have ideas of how to do things in a way that you might not think is the best. So it gives an opportunity to relinquish the way you want to do things and instead do the way that they want to do things. Um, Patience, loving kindness, and equanimity were also some things that I implemented a lot at my job. I worked with a lot of people that it was very much my way or the highway, and the particular situation I was in for the last couple of years was where if they asked me to do something, it was easier for me to make modifications than other people. So I would just have to say yes and do it. So this was sometimes very inconvenient, a little bit frustrating. So that allowed me to practice the patience and equanimity there, and also loving kindness towards some people that were very misunderstanding of how my job actually worked. And if anybody's ever worked with a lot of people, this is definitely something you would come up with. Lots and lots of frustrating things that can happen in the office. Honestly, in hindsight, and I thought this after I was at my job for a couple of years, my job was single-handedly the best way for me to cultivate the paramis in general. When you're working with a lot of people with a lot of ideas and you need to be careful with your speech and your actions, you need to do your work diligently. In my case, if it wasn't done diligently, it would impact people's lives. It's just a golden opportunity. People often overlook work when really it should be one of the first places that you consider. I feel like virtue is pretty straightforward. Take the 5 precepts at a minimum. If you break them, it's good to talk to a Kalyanamita, whether that's a monastic or another lay follower, as a way to try to understand what happened and how you can prevent it from happening in the future. Similarly, when you undertake the precepts, that's also a form of renunciation. You are actively choosing to not kill, to not steal, to not commit sexual misconduct, and so on. And if you want to amplify it a little bit, take the 8 precepts on the Uposatha days. Twice a month, maybe 4 if you feel like doing on the half moons. It's not a large commitment. And if it falls in the middle of the week, I knew people that would decide Saturday or Sunday. That's my Uposatha day. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on a full moon day or new moon. Wisdom, I think, will just come by practicing the path well and being around other wise people. That way, when you have questions, you can ask, get clarification, and clear away the ignorance you have about your practice. Energy, don't give up. Even when you don't feel like practicing, practice. Even if you don't want to meditate, go meditate. If you don't want to go read the suttas, go do it anyway. The Anguttara Nikaya has this great book of the ones where each sutta is about a line. So that could be like your minimum commitment of the day. Read 1 line for the Anguttara Nikaya. Find something. Just be consistent. It's more important to like do something for 5 minutes a day every day than for 2 hours once every 2 weeks. So keep up with whatever you determine your bare minimum will be. And I already touched on loving kindness and equanimity with work, but everything I said about work is also true about family. There's this fun phrase that if you think you're enlightened, go hang out with your family. So they are also a wonderful opportunity to practice the paramis. So be grateful for their being difficult, like that diamond I mentioned earlier with the Vajrayana. So be creative. There's tons and tons of ways to cultivate the paramis as a layperson.
You didn't mention satya, truth.
Truth.
Right? So, especially in this day and age, we see that uh, social consensus sometimes masquerades as the truth, but it's not the truth. You can have competing factions who are each waving their own flag and saying this flag is the truth, this and my flag is the truth, and the other one is false. But in having a kind of a war of the faction that wins is the one who gets to say that their version of the truth is the actual truth. But the truth that we want is that yatha bhuta jnana dasana, that's seeing reality as it actually is synonymous with the opening of the Dhamma eye, the entering of stream entry. So one has to have a lot of personal integrity to look as deeply as possible and to be very independent in a certain kind of way to keep simple. The truth is like simple. The truth is not a big complicated fabrication of some complex system. The truth is more like well, if you come to the what's happening in the body and the sensations that are happening in the body, or the state of the body, in a certain kind of way, the body is truthful. The body is not telling a lie. It just is expressing what's going on for you at the moment, whether the body's relaxed or tense or painful or pleasant. And in the contrast to that, the thoughts can have a tendency to be deceptive, and so one would have to be very, cautious and careful in evaluating even your own thoughts to see whether, like what's the intention behind those thoughts, whether they're actually in accord with reality or not. So that's a really great another aspect.
And truthfulness in particular helps support the others, because if you're lying to yourself, then you're not going to really have much wisdom.
Right.
Hello Bhumika, hello Anagarika, hello Anania, hello Julie. She asks, Dear Venerables, are you familiar with how one knows that they are in the formless realms? Is it like they're dreaming while they're meditating?
No, it's not like that.
I don't know anything about it.
So in the form realm has got the characteristic of being in touch and in tune with the senses at the outset, and then on the occasion of having separation from the hindrances, temporarily being escaped from the hindrances, one could experience the onset of powerful bliss or great happiness or joyful feelings like that. But then the formless realms, to my understanding, are extremely neutral, number one, and they're also, there's a sense of being separated from the body. That's why they're formless. So, like that, the body is there, but you're just not. The mind is like completely disengaged from any concern or awareness with what's going on with the material body. That's one quality of the formless realms. I also am not very experienced with it, but I know that I've talked to others who have that talent to get into that kind of meditation. Um, the suttas seem to present that the formless meditations are almost like a different practice, are quite a bit separated from the jhanas. But I've heard it said that actually they're not as much separated as one might think. So a person could be uh, practicing the first four jhanas and slip in and out of the formless experience. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you, Aya. Hello, Robert. He asks, some people claim to go to different realms after doing heavy hallucinogens like DMT and salvia. Is it possible these are actually sending these people to different realms?
I don't recommend mind-altering drugs, but I also have heard credible evidence that people who have a dedicated spiritual practice and then use hallucinogens can have like a mind-altering breakthrough, which is possible that it stays with them and changes them afterwards. So in that case, it seems to me that someone like that must have had some kind of habitual pattern of thinking that in some way was holding them back or preventing them from releasing certain like conventional ways of seeing things, and because of the being on drugs, they relax those that conventional thinking or that habitual thinking fell apart, and it would be something like if you wipe the motherboard on your computer and then it's completely blank, and it's an opportunity for some fresh air to come in or for a different perspective to come in. But then what they may or may not accomplish is, depending on the previous work that they've done, all the previous conditions that they have that might or might not support progress. But I don't necessarily I don't think of those drugs as taking somebody to a different realm of existence, only that it could help to clear some habitual brain patterns or thinking patterns. Even I've heard that like when a person is mentally ill, some kinds of mental illness are characterized by very repetitive and unpleasant, repetitive patterns of thinking, like the mind sort of gets in a groove and it keeps thinking about like some grudge or some resentment or some fear or something like that. And some therapists do use drugs to do that. Like I say, wipe the slate clean to break out that brain pattern. But then afterwards, if they don't have like very skillful therapy and counseling, they'll just fall right back into the same pattern again. If the same conditions exist, the same pattern just merely recreates itself. So I'll be open-minded to that extent. But using mind-altering drugs is not part of the Buddhist path.
Thank you, Aya. Moriah asks, can you please explain why lay people would benefit from keeping the 6th and the 8th precept? Specifically, why would the time of day for one meal be relevant for a lay person?
if you are so habituated to eating 3 times a day, then that's like your need to exist, your need to live, or your comfort, like it's so hung up in the habitual format of eating. The fasting from noon until the following dawn has got a specific application in the ancient times that going out at it's a convention. It's by far the simplest. The donors are expecting to give alms food in the morning. If you're going out to get food at nighttime, then you could run into all kinds of mishaps that's explained in the Vana. You might fall into a ditch, or somebody might think you're looking for a prostitute, or all these other disasters can happen when you go out seeking alms in the evening. And obviously those don't apply to a layperson in modern times. So the time of day is conventional, but taking only one meal of the day and fasting every day is a really important practice for challenging one's sensual desire and one's sensual craving. And it's really amazing how much sensual craving is just habit.
Related, related to what Aya is saying here is I was on the 8 precepts for most of the last 3 years before I became a anagarika, and for basically a whole calendar year without a break before that happened. And one of the biggest benefits is seeing how many different ways social pressure is related to food. So for example, at first, it was difficult for the reasons I stated, like just the habitual pattern, and the body's like, I'm hungry, if I just eat a little bit, I'll be okay, or I need this. And there's many times where what it was telling me I needed, I didn't actually need. So it was an opportunity to watch the craving. And if you're keeping all 8, a lot of social events are also tied around food. So I would have to tell my friends or my family, I'm not going to go out to this movie with you because I'm keeping these precepts, or I'm not going to play this board game, or whatever else. And that also usually involved dinner. So this showed me all sorts of craving and aversion that I had towards either wanting to partake in these or not. So it was really, really beneficial for seeing the habitual tendencies of my mind and what it actually needed and what it didn't. And a vast majority of the things that it was telling me that I needed, it was lying to me about. So it was really, really illuminating in that way. And it made my practice so much stronger, because it requires a lot of mental and body awareness and truthfulness, to go back to one of the previous questions. So the 8 precepts, after I was on them for a while, I couldn't see going back. There was just so much benefit to my practice. If anybody is really, really serious, but either doesn't want to, or wants to but doesn't have the opportunity to become a monastic, I would recommend being on them all the time, just because of how much a difference I saw between being on the 5 and being on the 8. Even though something like a meal doesn't sound like a big difference, it really, really opens a whole horizon of things you have to navigate.
In terms of the 8th precept about high and luxurious seats and beds, in modern times, a person might actually not have very many occasions for unpleasant physical feelings. They don't encounter pain. They don't encounter real physical hardship, because many people in modern times are just working in a desk job, or they're a student or something like that, and they don't have to be doing heavy physical labor. They don't have to be outside in the weather. They don't have to confront the extremes of hot and cold. They don't have to confront physical danger. We don't have like wild animals in danger of killing us. So in so many ways, we live a life of a minimum material discomfort. And so then a person doesn't have the opportunity to train the mind to be indifferent towards pleasure and pain, to be equanimous and able to experience pain without falling into grief and lamentation, and to experience pleasure without falling into excitement and greed. And so then cutting back in a way that it's like putting some stress into our life on purpose in order to challenge the practice is being able to hold and cope with stress. As I understand, that's the purpose of it. It's similar to the reason why it might be like at a monastery, you wouldn't always turn the temperature to exactly the level you want it to be. You don't automatically turn on the air conditioning right away in the summertime, but you just suffer with the heat. Or you don't instantly turn on the heat in the evening, and you just put up with the cold. So you subject yourself to some, not self-torture, but you subject yourself to some adverse conditions in order to train the reactions to the feeling, to the pleasant and unpleasant feeling.
Thank you, Aya. So, hello, Manal. She asks, Venerables, how would I actually know that I'm practicing right mindfulness sufficiently as it pertains to thoughts and conceptions? Do you recommend any sutta which can dig better into this?
The Honeyball, the Honeyball Sutta talks about how feelings and the proliferation of thoughts leads to evil consequences, and shows the danger of grasping and clinging onto thoughts in a way that proliferates into that papancha, the multiplication of unwholesome, unskillful, untruthful thinking. So it's like if you have a little person inside who jumps up on a little soapbox and starts waving their little fist and giving some kind of like a diatribe of complaining about reality. That's the kind of thinking which is dangerous. And mindfulness, in a way, is can be thought of being trained around the kind of perceptions that you entertain. And so if you look at everything that you're experiencing in terms of noticing the arising and the cessation of phenomena, seeing impermanence in phenomena, that's putting a particular lens, a particular perception onto everything that you experience in order to perceive it in a way which is skillful and is conducive to skillful, wholesome states of mind. And that would be a contrast with thinking, conceiving of things in terms of how unfair it is, how unpleasant it is, how, what righteous, having a righteous grudge or something like that. Or even having perceptions that are based on the delusion about the self. So, like if you're practicing meditation and then you have a little pain and you start to think, oh no, my leg is going to fall off, I might get a blood clot, I might have a heart event, I might be sick, this might kill me, or something like that. So those kind of thoughts are conducive to stimulating fear, stimulating aversion, stimulating negativity, and they're based on a deluded thinking, not realistic thinking. So the thing with mindfulness is to see things accurately the way they are. That it's just your leg fell asleep. You know, you got a vibration because your leg is falling asleep, and you can take care of those things. So that which is realistic and actually in line with reality, not spinning off to imagination, is also likely to be skillful. But also, since you mentioned conception, the some perceptions, some things that are described in the sutras as being perceptions, are actually ideas that you conceive of and apply to reality. So a skillful concept, say, is the concept is all conditioned things are impermanent. So one may develop that concept and then test that concept against our experience to develop. Then we have a chance, like all the things we look at, we can see, is it permanent or is it impermanent? And so that kind of conception is wholesome because it leads to a wholesome result. But the other kind of conception, like everybody's always out to get me, or something like that, is unskillful, unrealistic, deluded, and leads to negative mind states. But I recommend the Honeyball Sutta. Madhupindika 18 in the middle length discourses.
Okay. Thank you, Aya. So Ryan has a follow-up question about dependent origination. Venerables, so if dependent origination explains cause and effect, isn't it explaining karma then?
Karma is one of the types of causation, and that's the most important one that we're concerned about.
All right. Julie asks, is there a difference between a bodhisattva and a Buddha? Sometimes in the suttas, the Buddha is called bodhisattva. Is this only a synonym for Buddha? So this refers to before the Buddha was actually awakened. So he was just like you and me at that time, and he was striving towards becoming the Buddha that we have now, but it is not the same. So Ryan asks, Dear Venerables, am I understanding the middle path correctly by noticing that our mind seems to live in oppositions, such as the hindrances, i.e., between levels of desire and levels of aversion, levels of high energy and low energy from sloth and torpor, likewise with and including the 8 worldly concerns?
Yes, there's a certain way. So the middle way is not just the medium between those two extremes. So the mind has a tendency to sort things out into opposites. So there's good people and bad people. There's the examples that you gave. There's praise and blame, pleasure, pain, and so forth like that. So we are not seeking to find some kind of a medium point between those extremes, but rather the middle way is seeking to transcend that duality and come to a higher level of integration that sort of goes beyond those opposites. So then a mind which is cultivated according to the middle path would see, like in terms of the factors of the mind, those that are given as opposites, like if the mind is more towards restlessness or more towards sloth, just seeing that those are merely configurations in a constantly changing flow. So you've got the flow of phenomenon that has no stability, that's continuously changing and morphing into its opposite. But then realistically noticing that when the mind is sleepy, one would apply right effort or apply an energizing type of practice in order to counteract the sleepiness. And if the mind is sleepy, it might not be the ideal time to just go straight and try to practice tranquility, because practicing tranquility in the presence of sleepiness, you might not be able to sustain it. So it's realistic in that sense, but it's a transcendent these opposites in the sense that seeing they're all just different states of phenomenon that are continuously changing, and that wisdom is deeply equanimous towards all those polarities.
So something that also comes to mind for this as well is a lot of the classic sutta examples are like, is the world infinite or is it not infinite? Like, is it finite? And when people would come to the Buddha and ask these questions, he would put it aside and then teach the Dhamma. So if you're finding yourself with a is it this or is it that with the training, then it might be beneficial to realize that it's not necessarily either end or anything in the middle. When I was first starting to learn about this sort of stuff, a visual that Ayasudama gave me that I thought was very beneficial is looking at it like a triangle. So the top of the triangle, it's not at either end and it's not in between on this lower line. It transcends both points, which is the point of the Noble Eightfold Path. Rick Thorne asks, Venerables, can you share some reflections on whether to live as a basic lay practitioner versus living as an upasaka?
I recommend living as an upasaka.
Related to this though, recently on the Clear Mountain Monastery Discord, I don't remember which sutta it was, but they got some clarity on what it actually meant to be an upasika. And it just involves taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. It doesn't even include the precepts. So if you have taken refuge and you're doing the precepts, then you're already doing a great job.
A lot of times, those who are upasakas, the Buddha had the intention when he, after his awakening, to not go to his parinibbana until he had established a community of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasaka, upasika, male and female lay followers, all of whom had realized some level of noble attainments, and all of whom were able to explain and point out the teachings in a proper way. So then, in this question of, so the upasaka, upasika, in that sense, if they're awakened, they're already noble ones. But the Buddha does, in some suttas, in a very generous way, include that one who's a faith follower or one who's a Dhamma follower is also not considered an outsider to the training. They're considered an insider, so they're considered to be a trainee, and so that even if you didn't feel confident about, having had that awakening of the Dhamma eye, if you have that interest, that confidence, that uh, uh, decision to be engaged and to move in that direction, whether your practice is more on the cognitive understanding and wisdom side, or whether your tendency is more at the level of having trust and confidence in the triple gem as a devotional thing. That's an upasika. So if you would like to, don't trust the triple gem and don't investigate the teachings of the Buddha. That would be my description of an ordinary layperson, and I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that either. So Julie asks, just to confirm, a layperson can follow the 8 precepts and not be dressed in all white? Thank you, Venerables.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was following the 8 for most of that 3-year period, I was usually in black or gray, so the opposite.
So the colors are different in different cultural groups. So in the Burmese temple, they might be wearing a dark brown, or in the Sri Lankan would be wearing white. In Chinese temple, I think the devoted lay people would wear a special gray garment over their regular outfit when they go to the temple. And so the particular color is not important, but I think the underlying question is whether you should wear special clothing so that you look different than others. And really it depends on your job and what the expectation is. Your work might require you to be wearing a business attire or something like that. But I think it's very natural following 8 precepts that your attire would be more simplified than an ordinary person.
Thank you, Aya. So Moriah asks, I've been working towards keeping the 8 precepts, but am wondering if my approach of weaning off things is recommended over a cold turkey approach. I know I'm making exceptions when I don't need to.
I would recommend making exceptions when it's necessary because of compassion. So I had a friend years ago who took up the 8 precepts, and her husband was disappointed when she took up celibacy. And also, they used to do things together. I mean, they used to they were in their previous life, they were involved with motorcycle racing and bars and music and all kinds of exciting things like that. So the compromise that she made was that she was keeping the 8 precepts, but once a month she would go on a date with her husband. And they would they didn't have sex, but they would go to a movie or a show, and they would have a dinner in the evening and take some entertainment and have a party. Or like that. She wasn't drinking and she wasn't having sex, but she was doing that, and it was out of compassion and a sympathy for her husband. And so the same way, I don't know, the things that you might need to do for your children, or in other cases, not being so, don't use the precepts as a weapon to be cruel to somebody else. That's not the point.
Thank you, Aya. So Julie says, Dear Venerables, on Uposita days, what would be a skillful way for a working meditator to spend that day? Should they be up all night to meditate?
What do you think?
So, I think some of it will depend upon the type of job you have, and also if you follow the moon days or if you decide to do it on the weekend. So, when I was observing it, before I was on it all the time, if the full moon happened to be on like a Wednesday or something, um, then I would still take it up and I would tell whoever I might have engagements with, today is a practice day for me. So I would usually try to sit for a minimum of an hour more than whatever else I was doing. And I would also try to dedicate more time to studying the suttas on that day. So this way my practice was being ramped up, but in such a way where it didn't feel like I was putting a burden on myself. And because of doing this, I was able to do more and more over time. And by the time I took it up full time, I was able to just transition into what I was doing. On the all night thing, I think it depends as well, and also on your body. For example, I tend to do best until 10, maybe 10:30. After that, it's just diminishing returns, and I don't actually get much benefit out of it. But then there's other people who really do benefit from all night sits. And there have been a couple occasions where I have, but most of the time no. So you can experiment with it and see what works for you. And if it's on something like a Saturday instead of a workday week, then you could just structure your day to be a Dhamma day, or at least minimize whatever other obligations. Like I know you have kids, for example, so you could be like, okay, I have to do so and so with my kids between these hours. So I'm going to wake up an hour earlier and do this to increase my practice for the day. Or I'm going to go to bed half an hour earlier, or maybe stay up all night, like your suggestion here. Play around and see what works, and be willing to be flexible depending upon what you have to do on that day as well. I forget who I saw say this, but it was one of the monks on Bhante Jayasara's server, or even if you're just doing 5 minutes more, it's still more than you usually do, so it counts.
Okay.
Ryan says, Eightfold Path is the middle way, yes?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Arya Bamsi, this is Venerable, right?
Yes.
Welcome, Venerable. She asks, how do we get the opening of the Dhamma eye?
So the opening of the Dhamma eye is an epithet or a phrase meaning a stream entry. So the preconditions are to associate with wise people of integrity, to listen to the true Dhamma, to practice yoniso manasikara, or wise attention, directing the attention inwards and also directing attention towards looking to see causation. And then practicing the Dhamma according to the Dhamma, which is a big one. That means practicing the entire Eightfold Noble Path. So if you just do those four simple things, you will have satisfied the four proximate causes, the immediate conditions that support stream entry, or the opening of the Dhamma eye. But the opening the Dhamma eye is really, there's two sides to it. One is the transforming and quieting of desire and craving, and then the other part is the opening up of understanding and wisdom. So opening the Dhamma eye is really the wisdom part of it. So I would say really reflecting this yoniso manasikara, this wise attention, means that you will have heard the true Dhamma because you were with some people of integrity who were speaking about the true Dhamma, or you're reading about the true Dhamma. So you read those ideas and then you test those ideas against your own experience. So the wise reflection is to say, well, is it true or not true? Are things impermanent or are they permanent? Don't just take it on faith. Say, look at your experiences to see whether that's true or not. Look at your own experiences to see whether uh, uh, craving leads to dukkha, or whether the release of craving leads to the release of dukkha. So that wise attention is also um, involved with integrating and synthesizing your personal realization of wisdom.
Thank you, Maya. And another question from her. What is the third eye in Buddhist meaning?
Is that the,
It's like the one that'd be here.
the heavenly eye?
I don't know if she means the heavenly eye or...
I don't know what the third eye is in Buddhism.
Nah, I'm not familiar with anything.
So that might be a later idea, but not something that's part of the early Buddhism.
And Moriah says, I do have a daughter, and that's why I was asking about the necessity of the time of day for the meal. I want to practice moderation in eating, but still have dinner with my daughter in the evenings.
Right? So then make that out of compassion, make that adjustment. And set your fasting schedule that allows you to have dinner with your daughter in the evenings.
All right, and that's the last question, and we're out of time, so I think we'll conclude here. I think most of you already know this, but we have live streams Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 a.m. and at 7:30 p.m. We also have opportunities to come visit the monastery. So from Wednesday to Sunday, we have tea time at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. And then on Saturday, we have our program from 6:30 p.m. to from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And on Sunday, it's an all-day thing. We have volunteer opportunities at 8 a.m. We have the meal offering at 11, and we have our meditation program from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and it is open for anybody who would like to come. So thank you all for coming to the live stream tonight and for your wonderful questions. Practice well and be well, and may you soon realize the threefold bliss.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.